What is up? Welcome to Blake Street Banter, where one of us knows what the word banter means. The other one's along for the ride, and the other one's going to show up just a little bit late. So that was by design. No fault of his own. What's good, Tyler? How you doing, man?
I'm keeping myself alive. I'm trying to, get my head back in the game when it comes to the off season stuff. Shohei Ohtani, Colorado Rocky.
I mean,
anybody?
dude. Okay, so speaking of Ohtani and stupid MLB things, what was that promotion they were doing last night? And then it ended up being a stadium tour for Journey and Def Leppard or some shit. Like,
I actually didn't even really get to catch it. Like, see the initial promotion. I saw you tweeting about it and was like, I'm not gonna watch it right now. And then I woke up this morning and saw Def Leppard and was like, that's a somewhat odd thing for like the teams themselves to be promoting.
So
maybe we'll catch some hate for saying that, but
no, yeah, I mean, I think it's deserved. Like, is anybody worse at marketing than MLB? like you have this cool graphic, you have this moon satellite thing, and then it's like, oh, okay, the winter meetings are finishing. Maybe there's something to it. Nah, just a stadium tour. Like, so dumb. Like,
let's get some money in the seats.
Right.
What's new?
Let's get people talking with. I don't know. That was weird. The MLB is weird. So like, we had free agents. Winter meetings were kind of boring, right? Like, we kind of had that discussion in our group thread, right? Like, what is the point of the winter meetings? And I think this was the year that was just like, what is the point?
Yeah, I feel like I think it at least like gets you to the top of like the slide. Like the winter meetings is like climbing the ladder to get up the slide, and then I think things will get rolling now because we did see a slew of moves start to happen this week, and I think it was yesterday we saw like a few happen back to back. Of course, we saw Juan Soto traded to the Yankees, which started to become like a certainty, but really like it all kind of finished yesterday. So I think on their way out the door, they were like, all right, wait, we actually have to work. So let's hit the phones, let's hit the dinner tables.
Let's take something home to our boss.
Yeah.
That Juan Soto deal. Like, I know like Juan Soto's not in the NL West, and that's kind of cool, but this Thorpe cat and this King kid are going to be legit, and I absolutely hate that they're going to be in the Padres rotation for like years to come.
Yeah, they've managed to keep themselves kind of the same. I mean, the MLB team will not be quite as good, but the Padres have just found a way. They scout unlike really any other team in baseball. Like we all thought their farm system was, hanging at the bottom of the barrel, but then after this trade, we saw they are now tied for, at least according to MLB.com, they are tied with who is it at the top of their most top
Orioles?
100 prospects? Yeah, the Orioles, and then there was one other team. It might be the Mets, but I don't think it's the Mets. But they're tied with 7 top 100 prospects, tied for the most. And it's like, well, the Padres are just right back in it, hiding in the weeds. Probably not going to be great this year, but they found a way to just stay level, and this will probably benefit them for the next 5 years at least.
Yeah, 6. It might be the Dodgers. Dodgers have 6 up in the 100. Real quick look. And that would suck too.
Yeah, and same with the Dodgers. I mean, we're and Shohei Ohtani probably going to either LA or San Francisco. I'll just say he's going to LA more loosely because it could be the Dodgers. Apparently, the Angels are like very firmly still in that. But it seems like there is like a 50% chance he's going to the NL West at least. And
okay, so how do we feel about this? Because Buster Olney is on his old man takes, and I hate it. And is it bad for baseball that Ohtani is not out marketing his free agency? Yes or no?
I think Buster's take and Chris Russo also kind of had the same take. I think it's ridiculous. I think I saw some people kind of saying like, and I don't know if this is Shohei's intention, but he's kind of just testing the trust of these organizations that he might sign for 10 years with. Like, you can't keep my meeting private. I can't trust you to deal with anything else that might pop up, or let me just do my own thing when I'm with you, because he has to do his own thing like that. He has a training routine unlike any other player. So I think he's kind of just saying, like, look, I want to see what you guys are about, but also, like, I respect that he is not LeBron Jamesing his free agency. Like,
Yeah, I love it. I actually think it's the opposite. I think it's great for baseball because like we're all just like sitting here talking and waiting and like speculating where he might go and why he might go here. Like, why are the Angels still an idea? Because of this, and this, and like we all know 100% like he's not returning, but there's this like weird idea like, hey, maybe he is. Dave Roberts said that they had a meeting. So is he actually going to go to LA? I don't know. The Jays leaked their Florida trip conversation with him somehow. So he's not going to Toronto anymore. So like you have
the
all
Angels.
these things. And so like the Angels are still in play because
He's
they
going
haven't
to the Angels.
ruined anything. It's like he's going to go back and play with Mike Trout. I absolutely love it. I think it's a lot of fun. The discourse is awesome. And like he is like the most lovable secret person that I don't know anything about, but I feel like I would want to go hang out with him. And there's that certain aura about it. And it's like, all right, cool. I get this. I like you, Ohtani.
Well, I think he does already keep enough of a media presence. Like,
Yeah.
his Instagram page, there's still the barrier that he doesn't quite know how to express himself in the way that is going to, draw everyone's eyes and make this perfect connection. But he posts a lot of cool stuff on Instagram. He's doing cool unspoken things, and I think that's almost his theme for now.
That's who he is.
Like, he doesn't really. He's a man of few words in Major League Baseball, and he's the most popular and the best player there is. So,
right,
it's silly for people to be ragging on him not creating clicks for all the media people.
Right. It's almost created more clicks in a certain way. It's making the same amount. Like, I don't know. I didn't even read the buzzer only article. I should have probably prefaced that. I read the headline. I was like, yeah, this is terrible. And I listened to only talk on the podcast about it too. So I was like, all right, I'm over it. So yeah, I thought it was interesting. But yeah, you're not here to listen to us talk about the NL West. You're here to listen to us Blake Street Banter. So winter meetings are over, right? One of our favorite times of the year is that Rule 5 draft. So we got some picks of that. I think we're going to talk about that with our guest Patrick Lyons here in about 5-10 minutes when he pops on. But I want to talk about like this free agent market. So the Rockies signed Cal Quantrill. Noah and I kind of covered that last time. Pretty good signing. He slots in at the number 2, number 3 behind Gomber and Freeland for now. So good thing. And you wrote that great piece and we referenced that. So we don't need to talk about that a lot, but there still is a need for starting pitching. We kind of had that in the Rule 5. We'll talk about Molina in a little bit. He might be that type block type person, but who's out there? Like, the winter meetings did see some of our guys get locked up that we're kind of waiting for. Marco Gonzalez was traded. He was maybe like there was a lot of things in play there. Like dad coaches the Colorado Owls. Brother played at, you said, what was it?
Metro. Yeah.
So there was that Colorado connection. He for Rocky Mountain High or something up there. So we thought for sure, which I'm in a nice way. I'm kind of happy he's not coming back. I was really excited about Fetty from the KBO All-Star 2 years there and came back, but I think he ended up going to Milwaukee.
I think the White Sox,
White Sox. So somewhere up there. So like who's left on this market that they could possibly sign late?
I think a lot of these guys will end up going late. We talked about that a little bit in our message thread too. When you have those minor league signings, those are going to trickle in usually later on. And especially guys that are going to fill the back of the 40 man before you have your 60-day IL available. Like, that kind of jams things up a little bit because maybe some of these guys don't want to sign a minor league contract. They want to get that guaranteed money. But I think of a guy like Eric Lauer, who I pointed out in my article, like good chance because of how bad his 2023 was that he's not going to get a guaranteed contract, a major league contract that would get reported like that. But there's so many other guys on the market. And for the most part, the ones that I pointed out are still kind of hanging around. But I do expect in these next couple of weeks before the new year, it's going to get jumping. But we kind of know the way the Rockies are. They're probably going to pick up some guys towards the end of the offseason, like late January, early February, guys to bring to spring training. So those are going to be the less flashy guys, but that shouldn't mean they can't, kind of yield an impact. There's a lot of the Chad Cools out there. That Chad Cool by the end of his Rockies tenure was not pitching, so hot, but at the beginning he gave a couple months of good ball, and probably just wasn't ready to be a workhorse starter like he was kind of getting used as. So there's guys out there, and I'm sure that someone's going to be brought in that's somewhat major towards the end of the offseason.
Yeah, you have to imagine like that's still number one on the priority. And maybe we talk about that conversation. I think it was Billy Schmidt saying what they're looking for in the offseason. They had 4 targets, which we might banter about with Lions there. Like they have to add somebody, and I don't know how they're gonna do it. It's weird. Like I don't know. The Rockies are gonna rocky. It just kind of sucks. Like how are you gonna fill this in? Because like we saw Eduardo Rodriguez get $20 million a year for 4 years, which is absolutely insane. Hopefully that's the domino that kind of just starts getting all these other free agents going. I don't want a patchwork process again. I don't want Jose Urania like knowing that he's not going to last, and then we get the Chris Flexen and the who's the other guy we had?
Chase Anderson.
Chase Anderson. Like I don't want to patchwork through it. Like I want to have like the 5 or 6 solid guys that they're going to lean on throughout the year. And you're gonna have injuries and all that. So like how are we going to get that one guy that's going to get that 180 innings this year? Whether it's good or bad, it doesn't really matter. Like we're still fighting for not 100 losses. So how do we not patchwork? How do we just like, all right, this is what it is. This is how we're going to go. I don't know. That's the biggest thing for me. And so maybe that leads into some of those in-house options. Like we saw, like Noah Davis and Carl Kaufman are going to be names that are going to be knocking. Noah Davis doing the content thing last night. That was awesome. He put something out on his Twitter, like he's back in the lab, that kind of stuff. And I get so excited about seeing Noah Davis pitch. His stuff is so nasty. If you can just hone it in on strikes and knowing how to throw pitches would be great. But there's some other names that are going to be interesting. I kind of want to see what you're thinking. But like Jeff Criswell, Tanner Gordon, Nick Bush is coming back in the fold. I don't know if we'll see him next year after taking all last year off. But like, do we see a Joe Rock, a Case Williams coming up? I know you've been talking about McMahon quite a bit. But like any of those in-house names that are going to get that Noah Davis, Carl Kaufman treatment, like standing out to you?
Well, I think, excluding Noah Davis out of that list, Jeff Criswell, like if he can really put it together, good spring training, better start at AAA, I think he's that next guy up, other than Noah Davis. But when you look at someone like Case Williams, and I think Joe Rock also they're both gonna be Rule 5 eligible. With Case as a 2020 high schooler and Joe Rock as a 2021 collegiate player. They're both going to be Rule 5 eligible at the end of the season. You would think both are going to get protected, 2 top 20, 25 prospects in the system. You don't want to take as much of a risk on those guys as you did with like Tanner Gordon and Jeff Criswell. Like Rock and Williams, I think they view them as longer term pieces.
Yeah.
It's hard to throw a label like, oh, that guy is going to be, part of our future rotation, because the rotation is such a hard place to stick. But I think both those guys will be in play to get a call up at some point later in the season. The Rockies can, push the inevitable. They're going to be on the 40-man at some point. You might as well, just take care of that now. So I think depending on which one performs better, and you would think Joe Rock maybe a little bit more advanced at this point, although Case Williams, he did kick some ass in the Arizona Fall League. So we'll see. But I mean, I'm kind of all for Noah Davis right now. He showed in a couple of those starts he's got it. He might not be your innings eater, but if he can give you, close to 5 innings a start and limit the damage, like he'll be a fine 5th guy, and especially a 6th guy if someone else enters the fold.
Right. Yeah. I really think that number 6 spot is Noah Davis, like you said, because right now it's sitting Freeland, Cal, Gomber, then Feltner and Lambert. Lambert's slotted in as the number 5 spot right now, according to the Fangraphs team resource thing. I would really be excited about Joe Rock making that debut. Like you get that big strikeout guy. I think he's going to make everybody go off like with that big left-hand arm. Like he would be really cool to see. I would love to see Joe Rock and Case Williams. They're both friends of the pod, right? So like we're a little biased, but Case Williams, he's that fringe. Is he going to be a starter? Is he going to be a long reliever? How does that play out? So I think seeing what they're going to do with each of those in AAA would be interesting. Who gets the call up first? Joe Rock, Jeff Criswell, or Case Williams?
I think probably Criswell. Like he pitched an entire season at AAA. He's one of those guys that if things don't go well this year, they're gonna kind of dangle him over the edge a little bit. I don't know exactly when I think he was a 2018 or 2019 draftee, so he's kind of entering that minor league free agency. He was a 2020. Okay, so he's got a little bit of time then. But I think that they want to see what they have in him and see if he can really compete. So I think he just seems like the most logical first guy up.
I think so too. I'm looking at his baseball reference page. In July, he had a whip of 2.1, August 1.5, and then a September whip of 1.3, which shows that he's doing something. And his strikeouts per walk rate went from like a 1.8 to a 3.4 that last month. So he was pitching really good those final 20 innings. ERA tells a different story, but like those outline numbers are telling a different story that, all right, the PCL kicked my ass for a little bit, but I'm here. I got to figure it out. So I think I would put money on Jeff Criswell as well, just kind of because of that pedigree. Joe Rock, Case Williams, like coming off some injuries last year, you kind of know what you're going to get, and that is in the long-term plan. So I'm gonna go with Jeff Criswell as well, kind of figure out if we made that right move, moving Chad Smith for Criswell. So there's some in-house options. They're options, and so if we can add that, you sold me on the extra starting pitcher last time, so that'd be great. But hey, we got our winter meetings plug guy here. So can we just welcome Mr. Patrick Lyons real quick? What up, big dog?
Good evening, gentlemen. How are you doing tonight?
Doing all right.
It's a pleasure to have you once again. Thanks for making the time. You're a big dog out there in Nashville, or not many can even imagine hanging out. I forget what the hotel is called, but how was that?
It was cool. It was cool for a town like Nashville, who, if they get a major league team, they're going to be calling themselves the Nashville Stars, which is really what was on display. The best of the writing world in Major League Baseball, and then me. So yes, I hang out around the clouds. I'm far from that, but it was cool. It was actually my first time in Nashville, and got a little time down on Broadway to see what the bars are like down there, and the live music and whatnot. So that was cool. Didn't get a pair of boots or anything like that, but the Gaylord Opryland Hotel was interesting, as Patrick Saunders described it. Said it was kind of like the Truman Show, which is true. It's just this enclosed glass dome that you're inside of, and there's all these little pockets where you can go into another dome, which was kind of neat. But it was nice and festive, and everyone was walking around. And as I was thinking about describing the winter meetings, the one thing that continues to resonate is you can just show up to this thing if you're a fan and hang out in like a lobby area and just watch MLB Network the entire day, watch the celebrities or rather the athletes or former athletes and coaches and GMs, your favorite writers, walking around. And that's pretty cool. That's a very unique thing for baseball.
That's so weird. Like, hey, Tyler, meet me in Nashville. Let's just go hang out and watch MLB Network real quick and see if we can get any good details there. That's wild. No, that's cool, because I mean, it's not your first winter meetings, but first time in Nashville. Nashville's a fun city. The old Opry is a little bit out of downtown though, so I'm sure you had to travel in a little bit, kind of annoying logistical, but it's a fun sound. I like Nashville.
Yeah, it was nice. We were away from downtown, unfortunately, so. Like I said, went there once, and then it just became a whole mess to get back there. And I value sleep over maybe the hanging out aspect of things. But there's plenty of that going on actually at the resort. So it was pretty good. It was with my guy Kevin Henry from Fansided. So he was the Sherpa showing me around a little bit, showing me the ropes. Of course, had some Nashville hot chicken. So it was a good time.
Yeah, good. Yeah, it's always nice to have that inside guide to kind of walk you around there. So we're gonna just start with the fan question. We got the chat going here with Dylan Struble. Y'all think it's gonna be Bouchard, Tolley, or Goodman that starts in right field, or do you think that there could be a surprise candidate? Thanks. Keep up the great content. Appreciate you, Dylan. Thank you, dog. And what up, Skyler? Always appreciate you hopping in. So this is interesting. So I hate this. Who was it? Was it Billy or was it Bud that said we have a 6-way competition for 3 spots? I think it was Bud there. So we have the right field DH first base conundrum. KB is the first baseman. We kind of knew that. It was officially confirmed, I guess, this winter meetings. No real surprise for any of us that kind of cover it. But then you have the wild cards and those 5 guys. Again, Bouchard, Tolia, Goodman. You got Montero, and then who am I? Blackman. Blackman's that 6th guy. How does this shake out, Tyler? Like who is starting where opening day, and who's starting where the most throughout the season? Because we know Buddy loves to tinker with these lineups.
And I think tinkering will definitely occur. And we saw in spring training, Nolan Jones looked like I don't know what he looked like, but he did not look like the Nolan Jones that we came to know and love. So anything could happen in spring training, and I think that those games are going to hold a lot of weight. I think there's such a random small sample variance to them, but
yeah,
it's what you have to go on. So I think it's just going to come down to that. I think Bouchard, I was a little disappointed to read. I don't know if it was, again, Bill or Buddy who said that they see Bouchard as more of that reserve type guy. And I'm like, I think he was the one who, to this point, has really earned a chance to start, 4 or 5 times a week. So that would be my vote, but it's totally up in the air and a little frustrating almost.
Yeah, the Bouchard thing is weird. Like he should have been that 3-4 outfielder last year. They shouldn't have had a sign Profar like if he didn't get hurt, which sucks because he's been great. He's been like, what was he, like number 5 in like WAR for the Rockies last year? Like even though he played like 15 games, like it was something ridiculous like that. Like I don't understand how that man doesn't have a spot going into this next season. And we love Hunter Goodman, friend of the pod, and that kind of stuff. And like you like these guys. I'm a huge fan of Montero and Tolia. A little iffy on, but he's got some good things going on. But like, why isn't Bouchard like that guy? Blackman's the DH. Like, why is this even a conversation? Patrick, enlighten me.
Well, first off, I was the one who said 6-player platoon because
okay, my bad. That's on me.
But that's basically what they were saying,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you summed it up. So I think of first base, DH, right field. It's this collective, right? You've got 300%. So if you break it down, think of it in that way. A platoon is, hey, you're going to play 50% of the time. Not really, because there's more right-handers than left-handers, but 50 and 50. So if you got 300% of ABs between first, right, and DH, Chris Bryant's going to get 85% of those, and a majority is going to be at first base. You might run him out to right field. Charlie, majority in DH, you might run him out to right field. So that leaves 130% of typical at bat. So I don't know what that number breaks out to, 750 plate appearances, something like that. And then you've got 4 guys basically sharing that. And of course there's not enough for that. And, one of the disadvantages that both Bouchard and Montero have, despite the fact that you would probably say those guys have the 2 biggest upsides. Now that might not necessarily be fair for Goodman, because you saw what he's been able to do the last 2 seasons down in the minors, and you go, he definitely deserves a shot. But if you're looking at big league success, I mean, Montero, he ended September, hitting incredibly well once they gave him regular starts at first base. And you look at that guy and say, with another team, he can hit 30 home runs. Bouchard, similar vein of just getting on base, having those great kind of veteran at-bats, despite the fact that he hasn't been in the majors very long. But both of those guys can only really play one position.
Mm-hmm.
They're at a disadvantage. They don't have that same versatility that Tolia and Hunter Goodman have, who can play first base and right field. Tolia is a switch hitter, so he's going to hit from the left-hand side. The rest of the guys are right-handed hitters. So as cluttered as it might seem right now, there's still a decent chance that in the fact that Bill Schmidt has said, look, they want to try to improve the bench for this team going forward, they may want to get a veteran left-handed hitting outfielder, which means you have even less at bats for those young guys.
That's a good
Oh,
segue, but I
boy.
don't think we're done with this here. like if all 6 of these guys are on this roster, at what at what point does it stop Goodman's development? At what point do you kind of know what Montero and Tolia are? And Bouchard, like, what's he, like 60, 70 games into a professional career? Like, you still aren't 100% sure, like, as good as much as we're talking about him, but like, he's been great for when he's out there, but still, has he shown it for a long period of time? Not really sure. So it's like, I don't know. They have this weird decision that it's going to, yeah, these guys can all be on the roster, but at the same point, how does it make them better? Like, that's kind of the whole Rule 5 thing. Like, there's a reason position players aren't added in the Rule 5 as much as pitchers, because like there's that developmental piece. There's that you have to get playing time. You have to understand the hit tool, how you're hitting, all that consistency thing. I think it was Hunter Stolva like, as soon as I get into a rhythm, I'm good. But if you're taking me out of that rhythm, I'm going to struggle. And his words match his play, and like that's the thing. And I think that's just baseball in general. So like, how much of this is actually going to hinder the development of a Hunter Goodman going forward? Because all in all, he is the 6th man on the totem pole. Like, we know that. So how does this look going forward? And at what point do they kind of, lack of a better term, not so severe as I say it, but cut bait with like a Tolia Montero type player?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly. I think the most obvious thing for the Rockies to do, and this is something that Schmidt is not really going to, give any information out about, is make a trade, right? You got all of those guys, and there are teams probably salivating at getting Elihuris Montero on their roster. That being said, they know he doesn't really fit on the Rockies roster, so they're not going to give up much to get him in the first place, right? You also know that you've got 3 to 4 guys that can play the outfield down at AA or higher between, Sterling Thompson is probably more of a second baseman, right? Zach Dean, Benny Montgomery, Yanquiel Fernandez. And you go, all right, you've got to move somebody at some point. So despite the fact that they're really only looking at adding a backup catcher and improving the bench, I think there's still another, much larger deal out there for the Rockies to take some of this depth that they have for their outfielders and try to spin it and get something. It might not be anything major, but you can still walk away feeling good about it. Like Cal Quantrill, you might say, okay, this is a guy that might be a quality number 3 starter. Well, that's great, because those guys don't typically sign in Colorado. So take that if you can get that, and be fine with maybe getting less than what you would like if you do trade a Montero, or you do trade a Benny Montgomery, or even a Brendan Rodgers at second base, to clear room, as you're pointing out here, Aaron, clearing out some of that room for these young guys to play and to continue to progress.
Right. That makes the most sense. Like, and they're not, and of course the front office isn't going to shed that light out there, but that makes the most sense. And it just sucks. Like, that value for Montero is as low as it possibly could be, because we did whatever we did with him last year. Like, we won't need to get into that, but there's all of that in there. It's going to be interesting how this plays out, because spring training's March 1st, roughly. So no, it's usually Valentine's Day-ish, right?
Yeah,
it's early February. I was way off. So like, that's when they start reporting to camp, is February, Valentine's Day. So we have 2-3 months to kind of figure that out with that. It's going to be interesting. Skylar is asking, what do you guys think of playing Goodman in Albuquerque for this first half-ish of the season so you can get everyday time? That's kind of like what we're saying. Like, where does this lie? Is that why they're bringing in that veteran lefty outfielder, which is going to be super annoying when they do sign that guy? I think that's like what's best for Goodman, probably, right, Tyler? Like, it's got to be that move.
And he's the one guy of the mix that hasn't had that treatment really before. Maybe a little bit at the end of last season, where he was in this bench role. Like, he played in the minors the last 3 seasons and just did it at a full capacity. You think of Tolia, you think of Bouchard and Montero. They've all kind of had that hand dealt to them where they played 3 times a week or something. Yep. And so I think for Goodman's sake, at least now, unless he is crushing in spring training, it kind of makes sense to just say, all right, he is the guy who's going to get everyday playing time. if there's no moves made, and we'll let these other guys kind of just really battle it out. But it's tough.
Right. And
There's a huge downside to that, but
yeah,
might be better long term.
right. And there's still some development that Hunter needs to do defensively. Like he played left field in Hartford. He played first base pretty much in Albuquerque. So if we are going to throw him out in right field, that's a developmental piece that needs to happen. But Hunter also can play catcher. So like you have that third catcher on the bench that gives you a little bit more leeway when you don't even know who your backup catcher is. So, I mean, they have some decisions, which this is a good problem to have. And it's kind of self-inflicted good problem, but it's almost like a bad problem at the same time. It's just what the Rockies do.
It's
crazy,
it's an almost similar situation to 2018. That was a contending team, so also very much different. But in 2018, everyone was clamoring for Raimel Tapia and David Dahl to be starting in the corners, or even Dahl in center field, and get that everyday playing time. But you had Gerardo Parra and Carlos Gonzalez in the corners, and if you got rid of one or both of those guys, you don't have a Dahl or Tapia down in the minors. So it allows you to have your cake and eat it too by keeping the veteran up front and saying slowly but surely we're going to bring these young guys into the fold. Even though you would like for them to get that regular playing time sooner than later, you have to wait just a little bit. And so, yeah, Skylar's pointing out that's probably better. You'd like for Goodman to get regular starts, but if he's not, play down in AAA, and then when you're making some moves at the deadline, that veteran that you happen to bring in on a 1-year deal can move, and then Goodman's able to play beyond that. That's something interesting that I did realize this morning is Elias Diaz and Daniel Bard, as of right now, are the only guys that are going to be free agents at the end of the season. So you might not have the same active trade deadline, or you might have to be a little bit more aggressive and trade guys that are over a year away, like a Gomber or a Rogers, if he's still on the roster, or anybody else of that ilk, and say, yeah, they're not going to be a free agent after 2024, but we got to make some changes here and clear up some spot for the young guys.
Right. And so the counter argument to that is like we saw that last year, right, Patrick? Like we saw the call-ups, and then Nolan Jones decided was sat for 3 days and then was sit back down. We saw Eulerys Montero playing yo-yo with his career. Like they have those opportunities when people are going down, but then they're not fully going into it. One thing that really upset me down the winter meeting, so maybe Tyler and Patrick can kind of talk about this if you want. It was kind of upsetting how they were selling last year as a rebuild. Like that was the plan. We got the young guys the playing time, and now we're just going to kind of hone into it. But that was never the plan. It just kind of happened to fall in their lap. Like, hey, we have enough injuries, so we're going to let the young guys play. And this is how it worked out. And so now we're going to do it. And I don't know if I really like, why should a front office ever say like, yeah, we probably should have done that a little bit differently. But that just kind of, they were selling something to me when I know that it really wasn't how it broke down, which makes me a little bit nervous. Like you have a fantastic argument there, Patrick, but like, are the Rockies actually going to do that? Like if they do move that veteran presence, is that Hunter Goodman type going to get that playing time, or are we patchworking that lineup the rest of the way? I don't know. That just put me in a certain spot as a Rockies fan.
Yeah, I think that things did sort of just work out for them, and at least from the perspective of Jones and to an extent Doyle. Tovar, I think, was expected. Right. But in a way, this last year forced them to look so much further forward, and we have the predicament we've been talking about, all those corner spots, and as Patrick alluded to, it's only going to get more diluted. There's going to be a bunch more guys that are ready really by the end of this coming season. And certainly by the beginning of 2025. So I think that their mindset has had to have changed in light of the circumstances. They've got 2 new top prospects on their 40-man roster, and both are probably going to get a cup of coffee at the end of the season. Then you look towards 2025 as, hey, these are guys who need to just have like a path. So I think they've been forced to really accept that model a little bit more. And yeah, it was definitely a sharp left turn, but they found themselves in this pasture, and and they're just kind of running with it. So
Yeah.
I kind of understand it, even though it was a little out of left field.
Yeah, they do understand that it's about the future and the young guys. I do think that despite the fact that the eyes are down the road, there's opportunity in front of them each and every day to make moves and make transactions. One thing that never really was discussed much last year at the trade deadline, because, hey, the Rockies made a ton of moves. They brought in a bunch of arms. But at the same time, the guy that probably had the most value at the deadline was Elias Diaz. And I inquired about Elias Diaz, and the catcher market was kind of just starting to heat up down in Nashville, and we're starting to see some guys move now, and at 1 year $6 million, that obviously is not a huge investment, but there is little to no interest in possibly trading him, and he has a ton of value to the team right now, and that might open things up to a much larger debate about the value of a guy for 1 year in a season in which you may potentially lose 100 games again, versus trading him, before the season starts, and the prospect or prospects that you get back, they might do more for your team going forward. I think that's conversation worth having, but I think they ultimately see, holding on to Diaz here for this season to help get a relatively young or inexperienced pitching staff. There are 3 veterans right now that are going to start the season in Quantrill, Gomer, and Freeland. But after that, Diaz obviously provides a lot of value there. So I just think that they need to hunt out a trade. Maybe call back the Marlins up. A new assistant general manager, Gabe Kapler, who I randomly saw in the airport this morning. Actually, you know what? Wait a minute. Now I'm putting it together. I only saw 2 interesting people of note in the airport at 3:30 a.m. this morning: Gabe Kapler and Bill Schmidt. Now, were they meeting at the Nashville airport to work on maybe a Brendan Rodgers, Edward Cabrera trade? I didn't put those pieces together until right now. But those are the kind of things that is going to maybe expedite or increase the likelihood of this plan of waiting for these young guys to come up, allowing it to work. Because if Brendan Rodgers only has, a few more years of 2 more years of club control, and you're saying 2026, 2025, you start to get relevant again. Well, in 2026, Brendan Rodgers isn't even on this roster anymore.
Right.
So does he need to stay around now going forward? I'm certainly not saying, I'm not trying to put out there that anyone deserves to be traded or anything like that, but you can't take your eye off that prize. You got to do everything that you can to stack the deck so that all of these young guys, or young guys even in other organizations, are on the 2025, 2026, 2027 roster. And you can start acquiring some of those guys right now in this offseason.
Yeah. And there's so many assets in that minor league system that have some value that could go along with some of these expiring contracts coming up too. So, I mean, speaking kind of in that vein, so the Milwaukee Brewers just signed that huge deal with Junior Candelario, right? And we kind of saw this with the Rays when they did it to Wander Franco. And then the Phillies even did it way back in the day with Scott Kingery. No, was it Kingery? Yeah, I think it was Kingery. With these deals, these really team-friendly deals with these prospects that never made the majors before, and signed them to these giant contracts. Who is the guy in the Rocky system that the Rockies could sign to a junior-like contract? I don't think anybody in the system's getting that kind of money, because that was insane for somebody who's never made their professional debut. But who is that guy in the Rocky system that is getting that contract, Tyler? Like, who's next up?
Yeah, there's really none. Like, when you think about who Jackson Churio is, I think he's still 19. Not sure. I think he reached AAA too. So you think about a real prodigious 2 boxes that have been checked.
I messed up the name, my bad.
There's so many names going.
Yeah.
Same initials too.
Yeah.
But
got me.
Adael Amador is the only one who comes close. And I've personally thrown around a Amador to Franco comp, and I might not choose to do that anymore. But I think that Amador is the only one that really has any sort of potential on that front, because he's kind of a rare prospect talent. There's been people saying he's one of the best teenage prospects, teenage hitters they had seen in a really long time. I think he's now 21 or turning 21 very soon. So less potential there for kind of that same Franco or Trujillo type of deal, but he's the only one that really could fit that in my mind.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I know this is boring podcast content when everybody agrees. But yeah, I think Amador is that guy. Maybe, going into last season, you would have had Zach Veen, hoping that the power would catch up. Obviously, the injury kind of derails him a little bit. But the thing that you notice when you look down the list of names, other than Jonathan Singleton and Scott Kingery, there are a lot of players in the Latin American market. Players who, their families didn't come from a certain level of wealth, and so that guaranteed money. While the team is saving a lot by locking a guy up long term, based on what they would probably end up paying in 4 or 5 years through the arbitration process, those young guys are getting guaranteed money, and they're getting it a lot sooner than later. So I think Amador fits that type, and I think the Rockies would do themselves a lot of service to lock up Ezequiel Tovar after 1 year, especially because he was pretty much everything that they advertised.
Yep.
It is strange to think that he was exactly as good, if not maybe even a touch better than he was sold as by the Rockies, and yet wasn't even in the Rookie of the Year award conversation at all. Didn't even get a third place vote. Yet he was exactly what was prescribed. But Schmidt said that right now between Jones, Doyle less so because we know how unproven he is. But Jones and Tovar, they haven't really looked into locking either of those guys up for extensions. I think Tovar would be the more logical one. But I think even waiting around another year isn't going to necessarily going to cost you a lot. I mean, if Tovar goes off and becomes like the next Francisco Lindor, and he's popping out 30 plus home runs and still playing Gold Glove caliber defense, now all of a sudden we are talking about a contract that could approach $100 million. And then Nolan Jones is a guy that might just want to go to the traditional route and wait for free agency, but he's a little bit older too. So I'm sure his camp would be listening. So a lot could happen in this next year. And, again, at this time, after the 2024 winter meetings, we could be talking about a Tovar and or Nolan Jones extensions for the Rockies.
Yeah, you're right, but we'll probably wait for them both to go get another contract and then become free agents, then sign them to that 10-year contract. I just had to put in there, like the history says otherwise. So I agree. Tovar should be next on the list to get that long-term team contract. Like there's no reason it shouldn't have happened already. All right, so draft lottery. So were you able? So I know they close the doors. They do it like an hour or two before it's actually presented, which is super weird, and they cut it up for TV. It's like the celebrity softball game, which is super weird to me. But like from your perspective, like the draft lottery, second year in a row, I believe you're kind of hanging out around that spot. What's kind of the vibe, like the feeling, like just as it's going down?
It's fun. It happens very quickly. I will say that. It was in a much larger room this year than last year. It was pretty small, and so there were tables that you could sit at, and you could see MLB Network. So they were running down the list, and you can see what teams were still remaining. They definitely brought out the big names last year. It was nice to, for all people that were a part of the scouting departments to be at the tables and be the representatives this year. They brought out I think there were two active managers. At least two Hall of Famers. Rockies had Clint Hurdle. You also had Jason Mott there, former Rocky, representing the Cardinals. And you had Howard Johnson from the Mets, who was on the Rockies in the early 1990s there. So 3 different Rockies on stage. Brad Paisley was there. So you had some star power. It got a laugh every time that he would pull up a name and say, number 18, the Tampa Bay Rays. He'd hold it for a second, and then he would fling it off stage like a Frisbee to someone who just had to collect the little cards down on the bottom. So once the camera cut away, he was just throwing this projectile into the crowd, which was kind of fun. And once it got down towards the end and you go, well, the A's are gone, the Royals are gone, there's 3 picks left. And the Rockies were the highest ones there. And so I can remember, looking back at some people and exchanging glances with some of the other Rockies folks. And it was like, is this really going to happen? It happened so quick that my mind didn't fully go there. Cause it just was one after the other, but they end up falling where they should have. They're probably one of the only teams that got the exact same pick that they would have draft lottery or otherwise.
Right. And the whole draft lottery is a little controversial now. Like we were all kind of on board with it last year. Like that's kind of fun. That's kind of cool. But now Cleveland getting 2% chance of the first pick gets it, and then the Reds had a 0.9% chance or something crazy to get where they got. So Guardians, then the Reds, and then it's the Rockies at the 3 spot. Tyler, like 3 spot, you kind of sold me on like why it's actually important that the first pick would have been super great as opposed to the third. Kind of explain kind of what that hit does to us as Rockies fans, and then who are some of these names that we should be looking out for that we hope, cross our fingers, actually fall to us.
We know, fortunately, they were kind of playing with house money sitting there with 3 teams left. If they did manage to get that first pick, it would have been kind of monumental. You get an extra $1.5 million plus to spend on your draft pool, and that would have been huge. It definitely would have been huge. But as long as they didn't drop, is really where it's at. I think they've sort of been. Everyone's been thinking that they're probably going to pick second, third, fourth. That's fourth, maybe fifth would be a worst case outcome. But staying third at least holds you. You get this nice pool. You also get to kind of pick the last of a top tier that should hopefully form up. And that sort of brings us to those names. And there's so many. I think it's so hard to present just a few guys because as someone who loves to look into the draft, this is the hardest by far draft at this point in the winter to say, here's the top 5.
People love it though, Tyler. People love this stuff.
It's the best. But I'm going to have a guy like at 7 or 8 that I'm seeing at number 1 in mock drafts. So, I mean, for me, the 2 guys, and I think I said this on the DNVR pod, actually, when I was on there last, that JJ Weatherholt of West Virginia and Travis Bazan of Oregon State, I think those are the 2 jewels of the class. They have virtually zero cons or downsides to them. They're just everything good. Couple things aren't great, but everything is at least good. They both kind of project as second baseman, but maybe you kind of tweak them around. Just premium hitters. And I'd love for the Rockies to be able to grab a guy like that. They have all this hitting talent in their system, but I'm left with questions who, other than Amador, is truly a premium type of hitter. And I don't know that there is a guy like that. Of course, there's going to be love around Chase Burns. I think when he gets real amped up, and he gets amped up a lot, he can go 101, 102 on the hill. Kind of any former teammate of Chase Dollander. Sleeper for me, and sleeper is a silly term to throw around for a guy who's likely at a top 10 draft pick, but PJ Morlando is a high schooler. I forget exactly where he's from, but it's like the easiest swing I've ever seen, and apparently he already has like a max exit velo around 110, and he's 17 years old. So that's a guy for me. I don't know if he projects as a center fielder up the middle, but kind of a Zach Veen type of profile. Maybe better. I think it's crazy to think now about that, but those 3 hitters are probably the ones I have my eye on the most, and then Chase Burns would be he's going to be the college Jacob deGrom this year, kind of as Paul Skeens was last year, the 2-pitch killer.
All right.
Chase Burns is definitely that guy for me. It's funny as you're talking about like, well, if you go with a second baseman with Witherhold or Bazana, which would be kind of cool to have an Australian born player,
right.
Playing with the Rockies, only the second ever and first position player ever after relief pitcher Mark Hutton. That would be a fun story. And you go, if Amador is at second base, you really don't need to worry about the position of a player this high up. If you're going to get a dude, you might as well take him. And then of course, you say PJ Morlando, an outfielder, and you're like, well, wait a minute, maybe not an outfielder, but other than that, but even still, yeah. Maybe because he's a high school guy. So he's got a few more years. So you could possibly go that route. Are they going to stay away from high school pitching? You're damn right. They will not go that route. But they can get creative, right? Because with the third pick, they can like a guy who, might be trending more towards, the back half of the single digits, 8, 9, 10, 11, and say, hey, look, you're only expected to make this much money, right? Well, we'll give you a little bit more than that. And then they save a lot of money. And that extra draft capital can convince maybe some high schoolers, to forego their D1 commitment. The Rockies will also have a competitive balance round A pick this year. So we know how they were able to load up in that 2022 MLB draft, which is still looking to be like one of the best ones that they've been able to put together even after the Tommy John surgery to Jackson Cox. So it allows you to play around, as Tyler mentions, with that extra bonus pool money. But Chase Burns is the guy. You got to hope some other college pitcher steps up to give the Rockies some options. But could we see every Division I college pitcher intentionally pitch to a 5 ERA to avoid being selected 3rd overall? I have not heard this buzz exactly from the winter meetings, but if you're into conspiracy theories and you think there could be some pitchers out there trying to avoid to get selected 3rd overall and have to go to Denver, you never know. You just never know.
The Caleb Williams effect.
I mean, that's what happened last year, except for Rhett Lauder, and he did well enough that he got snagged before the Rockies. I think Chase Dollander was like, "Oh, I must have played myself out of this," and
this is what you get. Hey, but he's got a fast track to the pro, so there is that for him. We'll see how that goes. It's always interesting. The draft lottery is so weird. I think we're trying to figure it out, Patrick. You can enlighten us. So I'm pretty sure the Rockies do not get a lottery pick next year because they've been in it 2 years. But there's something about the markets. So Tyler and I were trying to figure out, is it 2 years or 3 years for the small market teams, which I think Rockies are part of the small market. Do you have any idea?
I'll be honest. No. I do and I don't. This is still so new. So we call the whole thing the draft lottery, right? Except the first, I believe the first 6 picks are the lottery.
Right.
So because the Rockies were not in the first 6 picks last year, this is only their first year. So next year they could still, be in that top 6. They could still get the first overall pick. But the A's and Royals, they were in the top 6 last year and this year. So they will have to wait until as early as the 10th pick next year. Yeah. And that's so that's one of the reasons why the Nationals, despite the fact that as bad as they weren't able to get into that lottery because they are a payor. Like they pay into revenue. They're not getting any money. They're paying into it. Revenue. So they're like a large market team, right? Yeah. So a large market team, no, you shouldn't be able to get into the lottery 2 years in a row. So despite the fact that they were still really bad this year, almost unintentionally, too bad, so sad. You don't get a pick that high. So the Rockies will probably be feeling this, going into the 2026 draft. But for right now, they're okay. And when I don't know how this changes the numbers, because I think last year, right? If you were one of the worst 3 teams, you had like a 16% chance, somewhere in there. I think 16 is the number. And then I think because the Nationals, had to move back, it bumped it up to like 18.3. So if the A's and Royals are really bad next year and they're bumped out, I mean, the Rockies could have like a 20% chance next year if they're one of the 3 worst teams. I don't know. It's a lottery. It's a crapshoot.
That's all numbers.
And it'll be the team with the 0.5% chance that wins.
Right.
Anyway.
It doesn't matter, which also makes it fun because, imagine if we were a good team and we were fighting for this and we were able to get that top pick. That'd be kind of fun at the same time. That's the lottery there for you. But it's interesting. Third pot. It's gonna be fun to see how it plays out. All right, let's end it with this. I think this is the meat and potatoes of it. The Rule 5 draft. I was actually upset I was working instead of able to listen to it on the radio. So the Rockies added Anthony Molina, a Tampa Bay Rays right-hand relief pitcher that we lost and gained a few in the MILB part of it. We'll talk about that in a second. But is Sterling Monfort onto something that he is the next German Marquez? Tyler, go.
I mean, I think that there's enough of those demographic comparisons. I think Venezuela, really young at the time, Tampa Bay Rays, 2 real standout pitches at the time he gets to the big or roughly when he's getting to the big leagues. And then it's like, well, you have scraped the surface and there's so much going on. Although, to be fair, when you are thinking about it from that more grand view, I think there's a comparison to be made. And Molina's a guy with a pretty big fastball, except he doesn't really have a good breaking ball by the accounts I've seen. It's a fastball changeup. Hopefully you develop I think it's a slider that he throws. And he has two fastballs, a four seam and a sinker, which Herman now is just like that. So there's something there, but that was a very sensational thing to get people. I mean, it got people going.
It got it going. Yeah, for sure. Where do we slot him in at, Patrick? So the rule MLB Rule 5, like by now if you've been listening to us, you already know, like he has to be on the roster for the entire season. Otherwise he gets offered back to the Rays for like $50,000. And after that, if they chose not to take him, he becomes a DFA'd waiver wire pickup and where he could come back to the Rockies AAA team. So all that, he has to be on the Rocky roster. Is he starting at the fifth starter spot? Is he doing the tie block dance, or is he going to be just kind of slotted into kind of that 6th, 7th, 8th inning role? Where do we see old Molina here?
It will probably be unintentionally a little bit of the tie block boogie. It will be. Ultimately, the plan for Anthony Molina is to be kind of the long reliever. They want to keep him healthy, and that should be a relatively easy thing because he did throw a lot of innings last year, right? I want to say in the 120s, something like that. So, he has that ability to stick around, and so the real plan for Anthony Molina is again long relief role and sure, does that mean a couple spot starts where maybe he goes 3 innings, 4, if he can keep his pitch count down? But they want to keep him healthy in 2024. And then in 2025, after the year in the big leagues, now you might start to see him go back to the rotation, and he could be a regular guy. So, for a team that is for the last 2 years had been bringing Ty Block back as a long relief role, to have a young guy that you can be maybe more hopeful for, or at least have some projectability and say like, oh, this guy is really young, and we think that changeup can play up, and he can learn a lot from Senzatella and Herman Marquez, who aren't going to be pitching. We might not see Marquez until after the All-Star break. So if Molina's sitting on the bench talking with those guys and on a day in, day out basis, like that has a lot of value. And I think that could be really beneficial for him. So I think that was a really good pickup. And, the quote by Sterling was really just that. It was just a quote of, hey, the scout that took him said, there's some comparisons to be made. And the numbers as far as strikeouts are concerned were kind of on the low side for Marquez in the minors. And then all of a sudden they ramped up. They're hoping that's the case for Anthony Molina. Do they think he will be the next Herman Marquez? I don't exactly know. I think the odds are that he probably won't be because we know how good Marquez has been. But on the surface, as Tyler kind of elaborated, he checks off enough boxes to go, hey, you know what? This could be a cool little story here. And a cool little tweet.
Yeah, it was a fun little tweet. So I have this cool little thing up here. So he sports 3 pitches. The changeup sits about 85, the 4-seamers around 94, and then his slider is about 85. Just so people are kind of aware what he brings to that table. It'll be fun. The Rule 5 is fun. It's kind of weird thinking like these players have no idea if they're being picked until that their name actually is being called out. So like that human side of it, I think it was Nick Kujia, former Rocky prospect. He was in the Rule 5 draft twice, and he was selected in the MLB round twice, once by the Tigers, once by the Rockies. And he was saying like he had no idea until like he was even on the MLB piece of it, like if he wasn't optioned, and like he was just told when he was picked by somebody, that's when he was told. And it's just kind of wild to think about, like you have no idea what your future is literally at all, and then you're getting picked. So that human side of it isn't as fun, but the idea of like the competitive balance piece of it is definitely interesting. And so adding a Molina type is going to be good, adds another arm, and it's kind of a low risk high reward type piece with it. Like if it doesn't work out, we just offer it back, and hopefully he's not as good and we can develop him in the AAA. And there's that whole game too. So it'll be interesting how it plays. The MILB, our kind of spot, there's a few names on this one. So we lost 5 players. Each of you kind of pick which one you kind of feel like is going to be the biggest hit. Phineas Del Bonta Smith, we lost the best name in baseball to the Pirates. Nick Garcia, he was attached to the Connor Joe. He came from the Pirates last year. Now is with the Giants. Gabriel Barbosa to the Yankees. Nelvis Ochoa to the Orioles. And Alan Perdomo to the Mets. Tyler, like which one is like the biggest hit to our kind of our prospect pool here?
It's tough since they're all, I think for the most part, especially the latter three are low in the minor league ranks. But Gabriel Barbosa was someone that I had been keeping my eye on. He's about to turn 22, but he like never walked anyone when he did pitch in the Rockies system. And walks, that might almost kind of be an adjustment for stuff that you're just hanging in the zone all the time. But he definitely got the job done when he did pitch. Probably was heading to high this year, maybe on that track to be in consideration in a couple years. So overall, it's not some grand loss, but he certainly had some intrigue to him, and he was someone that I would try to check in when he made a start. So a little sad to see, all those guys with some upside get taken there.
Yeah, I did talk with somebody inside the Rockies player development, and Barbosa was the guy for them that I think has the best projectability. I think the loss of Delbonta Smith, is by no means catastrophic, but for a team that, we saw last year on the reliever front, going down and getting an experienced arm and bringing him up. Delbonta Smith's, a little bit older, played in the Arizona Fall League in 2022. So, the org obviously saw some things in him. So, someone will have to step up in his place. So that is a loss that I think that, will have, somewhat of a small, but still an impact on the big league roster. But I think Barbosa is the one that, I think has the best projectability. As for the guys out in the Dominican Summer League and the Complex League, they're so as you mentioned about Nick Kuzia, there's no lists anywhere that you can find who's eligible for the MILB. Like Roster Resource does a great job of showing you, hey, this guy is eligible for the Rule 5, and you see a bunch of names, and most of them aren't going to happen. But at least you can look at that, or there's a rule of thumb because you say, all right, if they're 18 or younger, the 5 years from when they were drafted or signed, 4 years if you're 19 or older. But with the minor league phase, there's all kinds of stuff about, well, what level do they even need to be at? Like if you were in AA, you could be drafted, but then you have to stick on a AAA roster. There's all kinds of weird wrinkles to this. And it's not even a AAA draft. Like it's all levels of the minor league phase. Yeah, I think last year the Phillies took like 9 guys.
They were filling up their entire
they kept going and going and going. So yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. The big name for me, I really do like the name, is Alan Perdomo. One of our Isaac, he kind of covers our DSL, ASL. He did a player spotlight on him. Just a big live yarm. Was touching 95. He's like 18, 19 years old, 20. Probably 20 at the end of the year. And he was just big strikeout numbers, ACL, take that what it's worth. But there could have been a kind of a knockout reliever in that as it's being honed in. It was somebody I was going to be watching this year, see how he did in Fresno. But we'll have to kind of get past that a little bit. And then Delbonta Smith, like a friend of a pod, him and Justin Wick played summer ball a little bit a while back. And it was just fun listening to Justin Wick talk about Delbonta Smith, just a good guy going forward. But they did gain 2 guys, and I know you're high on one of these guys, Tyler, but Brendan Hardy from the Mets and Thomas Ponticelli from the Guardians. I'm going to be straight up. I have not had any time to kind of research these guys, so I'm going to lean on you 2 for these. But Brendan Hardy, Tyler, you're kind of excited about him.
Yeah, like the best way to spend your Thursday morning is going on MILB TV and watching your team's new MILB Rule 5 picks. And so I watched I think it was a 2 2/3 inning appearance for Hardy. He made a lot of multi-inning appearances for I think it's the Binghamton Rumble Ponies. I think 12 of his 24 outings were over 1 inning, and he struck out 4 guys. Fastball has some zip to it. They didn't have the gun and the velo coming to the broadcast, but it looked probably 94, 96 with some carry to it, and then had a decent breaking ball. So he's someone that pitched in, I think, AAA for half the season last year. Or no, he didn't hit AAA, but he struck out, 54 guys in 35 innings. So he can miss bats. He limits damage. It's a pretty big frame. So I think that was a solid pick, someone who could potentially be reinforcing that bullpen at some point next season.
Yeah, he got hot when he got promoted to AA, striking out 15 guys and only walking one. So he's very interesting for sure. It seems like if he's healthy, he might start the year at AAA, but I think they're still eligible to send him to Hartford if they wanted to, just to get a little bit more experience and say, hey, let's have a little bit more success before we send you to the PCL and you curse the day that the minor league phase of the Rule 5 draft ever existed. And then Ponticelli is just kind of a swingman role. He'll be, the Isotopes version of Ty Block, where, he can start just a little bit, but if all goes well with the young guys in the rotation in AA, the Case Williams, Carson Palmquist, Joe Rock, Jeff Criswell, there really won't be room for him in the rotation. But they just see it as a nice depth piece for them for at least that AAA roster, which they Kuzia, was one of those guys last year at times. So if you get an opportunity to get a player that has some upside, or at least can fill a spot where you need it in the upper levels of your minor league teams, that I think that's important because it does allow you to protect some of those other younger guys that you do have your eye on, and you are trying to make sure they can get to the big leagues in a healthy spot.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, that's kind of the MO here. It's like, all right, how can we kind of fill this in and help our other guys going forward? It's going to be interesting watching that Hardy guy pitch. It'll be fun. I just was looking at some of his numbers. He was sitting at about 93 on the mile per hour on the fastball because the ACL does some of the StatCast stuff. And so that was about 93 at ACL. So maybe he might have upped it up a little bit as his AA starts there.
So correct me if I'm wrong. Tyler, you're a fan of Hardy. And Aaron, you sounds like you're becoming a fan of Hardy. Dare I say you guys are becoming the Hardy Boys?
That's the mystery.
Yeah, we're out there solving all the mysteries. Aaron's finding these velo numbers, so there we go.
Okay,
that's the mystery. All right, and let's end it with these two questions. We had the chat questions by Skylar. He had to leave real quick. I've already told him all my thoughts on this, and I think Tyler has too. Patrick, what do you think of Tim Anderson figuring it out? Figured out contract. Can't remember if I've seen anything from you on it. I think it's a stupid idea. It's horrible. There's absolutely no way this should make any sense for anybody, especially with the Rockies. But I'll let you answer the question because he posed it to you, Patrick. Tim Anderson?
That's a question? Tim Anderson?
Tim Anderson?
Yes, that's the person. I'm confirming that he's alive and well. Yeah, I can't see that. Obviously, we know Tovar's at second base. If you do come together on a deal with a Brendan Rodgers, I don't think Sterling Thompson and Adel Amador are going to be ready for the big leagues next season in April, right, or March 28th. We'll see them later on in the season. But one of the best things that the Rockies did for themselves, and again, it's a very short runway. But one of the best things they did for themselves in making those trades at the deadline is allowing guys like a Tim Anderson a little bit of trust that, like, look, we'll sign you to a 1-year deal, and yeah, we will trade you if we're not good. We will get you to a contender and potentially win the ring, and go on and maybe sign a multi-year deal like we saw with a Pierce Johnson, excuse me. So like there was some value to that, but until Brendan Rodgers gets dealt, or if he even does, and even then, I don't know that Tim Anderson is a guy that the Rockies would look to and say, let's bring this guy into the clubhouse. There are just certain players that can rub old school baseball folks, the wrong way. But they can still be good clubhouse guys. I mean, look at Tommy Pham. Look at what Tommy Pham was able to do in Arizona. He went into that clubhouse for all those young guys. He was accepted, and really helped his value, and getting to see it, firsthand throughout the month of October, covering the Diamondbacks. It was like, okay, there's something to this guy in a right environment, in the right clubhouse. A guy can really excel, and teammates can really learn from them. And so I think the Rockies have one of those kind of clubhouses where they might be able to bring someone that's maybe a little rough around the edges into that clubhouse and work with them and say, hey, no, we're kind of a family. We're all friends here in different ways, in different capacities, despite our different backgrounds. So, there is potential for that. That being said, the Rockies typically just don't do those kind of things. So 0.1% chance.
Yeah. So you're saying there's a chance though.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. But he's not a lefty outfielder or backup catcher, which we didn't even get a chance to talk about the 4 needs that the Rockies need. And then bounce back. Want to hear an answer later. Any interest in a Bard trade? Maybe. I can see. I don't know if the Rockies would move from him though. Like he had some value 2 years ago. Like, why aren't we trading Bard? We were all mad about that. Last year was a struggle for him. So we hopefully for a bounce back. But does he possibly get moved, Skyler, by July 31st? Like or Tyler, sorry. Does he get moved by that deadline?
I have a hard time envisioning it. Even when he was, in a good place mentally, the arm and the stuff had kind of taken a step back. I think he was starting to sit more 95, 97 versus, the peak. His kind of little peak with the Rockies was 98 to 100. And we saw him get hit more even when he was in the zone. So there's a lot of things that would have to line up for that to happen. But I guess if he is still sitting upper 90s, someone might take a shot. But there's just so much going on there in the background. Everyone knows his story, and it shouldn't be held against him. But at the same time, you got to trade for certainty, and there's not a ton there.
Yeah, right now, because of the 2023 season, there's not a lot of value, especially, I believe his contract next year is $9 million. So that even in and of itself doesn't make him terribly attractive. Buddy did say that there's a 2-man race, but I think you can throw Justin Lawrence in there too. Actually, no, I stand corrected. Bard and Lawrence, those closer guys, and then maybe a third, especially because he excelled really well in that setup role, Tyler Kinley. So so maybe you protect, again, going back to this idea of using veteran players to protect and to help some of the younger guys, despite the fact that you could trade a vet, bring in a young guy, but now you might overexpose someone who needs to be handled with kid gloves just a little bit. I don't think Justin Lawrence needs that. But, he had a rough go of it, late in the dog days of summer. So maybe start the year out with Bard and you're able to get something there before transitioning Lawrence into that full-time role. Allow him to be the guy to take the closer's role away from Bard versus the veteran guy taking away from the young guy, or the young guy feeling that pressure of Bard breathing down his neck, and hardly in a figurative sense, because Daniel Bard is a fan of everybody in that clubhouse. So he's rooting everybody on. He doesn't care. You could send him out there, 3 days a week as a opener, and he'd be totally fine with that. He just wants to win ball games and help the club. So I think there's probably, if he's playing really well, I would still probably only put at maybe a 40% chance that he would get traded or moved on. And some of that would have to be, up to him. Like, hey, do I want to go out there and maybe win a ring, or, do I want to do what's maybe best for my family and just stay here, finish this season out. And then next year or in the off season, if I want to continue to keep playing, then, I'll move my young family out to another city. But for right now, yeah, he's got to reclaim a lot of that value. And he had a lot of it in 2022, but he lost a ton of it in 23.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Even if he is great, it's still slim chance that he goes somewhere. All right, and then hot take time. Finish it with this. Who is the prospect that makes their debut first this year? Tyler, you go first.
Oh man, on the spot.
Okay, maybe I'll go first. I'll go first.
We need an hour of prep time for this kind of question. Yeah, this is hard.
No, this is always the fun stuff. This is just on the spot to see how expertise you two are, because I'm definitely on the lower end of this totem pole here. So I think the prospect that makes it first is it's going to be Jeff Criswell. I just think that starting pitching rotation piece, he's definitely next on the list. They don't know what's there with Noah Carl. Like, Jeff, I think, is next. I'm going to go Jeff Criswell. I'm going out there. I think they need to figure it out, kind of like we were talking about earlier. They need to figure out what they have with Jeff and kind of go with that. So Criswell is my guy.
I'm going with Julio Carreras. I had to think for a moment.
You're big on this.
But
yes.
He's on the 40-man, AAA experience. Might be some flexibility with that that final utility bench role if they decide to move on from Alan Trejo. So could see a spot for Carreras being there kind of early in the year.
All right. Well, in the traditional sense, my first thought was Jeff Criswell, but I'm not cheating. I'm not cheating when I say this, because you said who's going to make their debut first.
Their debut, yes.
Anthony Molina.
God.
Anthony Molina. Sorry, Tyler. Come on. It's Anthony Molina. I mean, he's going to be on the
he did this
opening
to
day
us
roster.
last year. Like how we missed Tovar twice in the draft.
I'm gonna hold out though that like he doesn't pitch for the first week.
There we
They're
go.
just kind of hanging on to him, and Carreras is right there. That's my only hope.
Maybe. I feel good because in our draft, I did go off board and I took Carl Kaufman to get some innings, and he wasn't on the 40-man roster, so I'm proud of that pick last year.
He ran away with it.
Yeah, that Tovar piece went through it. But yeah, no, this was fun, guys. Huge thoughts and prayers out to Warren Bernabel, who was shot in a robbery back home, which is a little scary in his hometown, not at his home. So keep that thoughts and prayers, looking for updates as we go forward. I know his wife got hit with a stray bullet as well, so thoughts going out to there. But with that somber thought, we are in the middle of off season. Ohtani's going to sign with the Rockies. We have good vibes going. It is, the winter meetings are over. Christmas time around the corner, New Year coming. So Patrick, if everybody's listening, I should probably let you plug your stuff, and then we'll get out of here, even though everybody that's listening to us knows who you are. So it's kind of a waste of time, but go ahead, do you.
Hi to all my family who religiously consumes the Blake Street Banter content. Thank you for following me and all your support. Yeah, the DNVR.com for all the written articles, and at Patrick D. Lyons on Twitter. I've also been trying my hand at some TikToks. MLB, there's no MLB news on TikTok, and there's probably a reason why, because I don't think 13-year-old girls are really interested in where Shohei Ohtani signs yet.
They should be.
I got to crack that code. I'm cracking that code. So check me out over there. I think
you need to mix a dance in there.
Yeah, there you go.
That's how you do it.
No more green screen stuff. Yeah.
About that Juan Soto trade?
Oh, there it is.
What?
There it is.
He's got it.
He's already got his clip for his TikTok.
That's it. Just put
He's
a
doing his for
JID
his
track
TikTok.
under that. It's going to be great. So it's like at Patrick D. Lyons MLB. So yeah, I'm hoping to evolve. But the video editing skills are improving. They're coming along. So that's been a lot of fun.
All right, sweet. Tyler, plug yourself.
New recently at Ty Paddor, Paddor, getting professional out here. So I don't really tweet anymore, but you can look through my likes if you want or something like that. But otherwise, just Blake Street Banter.
There we go. Yeah, Blake Street Banter. We'll be here covering the minors the best we can, having fun along the road. As always, go minor league or go Rocks in the minor league affiliates. Woo! Thank you for watching and listening. Please check out our link tree for more content.